Hello, YouTube. This is umills03. So in the previous lesson in my set of videos regarding my understanding of the Java curriculum, in the previous lesson we were talking about string objects. And so we've already printed things like hello world before, but we've also talked about variables. And so in the previous lesson, we discovered that we can basically save strings. So we can save words and letters and sentences within variables. And so those are called string variables, string objects. And we went to the Java API. So if you pull up a search engine, this is something we did in the previous video, where if you go to string Java API, you can take a look at the first link here. And we talked about how Java provides documentation for this class called string. And so string is really good at representing character strings, like letters and words and sentences, paragraphs, things like that. And we scrolled down here and we said, well, there's a lot of methods here and there's a lot of different functionality that we have available to us within the string class. But in the previous lesson, we laid out some different methods that I thought might be the most helpful for you to be familiar with. So we talked about the concat method, the idea that you can combine two different string objects. And there's two ways to do that. Either use the plus sign or use the dot concat method. So remember s1 dot concat of s2, or you could have just said s1 plus s2. So that's down here. And then we talked about the length method, right? The number of characters in a string is pretty straightforward, just returns an integer. We talked about making a string uppercase or lowercase, all the letters of it uppercase or lowercase. We talked about comparing two strings, seeing if two strings are equal. So I don't see that listed down here, but the is equal method. We talked about whether a string is empty, trying to see whether or not its length is 0. The equals ignore case, right? So equals and equals ignore case. So we're familiar with those. And then those are the methods that we should be familiar with at this point. So now we're going to talk about some other methods that we can operate on when we have different string objects. So the ones that you should be familiar with are going to be starts with and ends with. And I'm gonna add these onto the old list. So let's do the new. I'll write the new ones and then we'll write the old ones after that. So index of, last index of. So these are the ones that we'll cover in this video. So replace all. I just tried to prepare myself and write down the ones that I thought might be the most interesting for you guys. And then of course, we already have the is empty. We already have equals, okay, and equals ignore case. We already have the length method. We already have the two uppercase and the two lowercase. And then we have the concat method. And then of course we know what the plus sign does as well. So the concat. So these string methods you really should try to be familiar with and know what they do and how to use them. So let's do some examples. So for example, if we're talking about the starts with method, so what we're going to do here is we're going to say a.startsWith of b returns true if and only if the letters of B form the beginning of the letters of A. So for example, A starts with B. A might have other letters after B, but doesn't have to. Okay, so for example, for all strings A, so any string that you want, any arbitrary string, if you said system.out.println of A dot starts with of A, certainly this returns true, right? Every string starts with itself. So for example, if you have potato dot starts with of pot, certainly this would be true. But if you say something like apple dot starts with of apples, then this is false, right? Because does the word apples start with A-P-P-L-E-S? No, it doesn't. It just, it's A-P-P-L-E, and then it doesn't even have this S in it, so that would be an issue. Same thing with ends with, so, you can probably guess out what this method does. So if you say ending, and then you see if that's ends with end, no, that's false, because ending doesn't end with end, ending starts with end, so that would be false. But if you had something like helicopters, and maybe you just want to see if it's like a plural word or something, so you could just say, oh, it ends with S, right? And then so this would of course be true. And so let's look at all this output here. So here we expect true, true, false, false, true. So now if we go ahead and run this code, we can double check that and try to get a sense of the example here. So true, true, false, false, true. And that's exactly what we were expecting here, right? So those are the five 5 statements that we ran here. Now we can talk about the index of and the last index of method. Let's talk about index positions in Java. So index positions in Java begin at 0. Okay, so for example, potato. Okay, so the P here has index position 0. The O has index position 1. The T has index position 2, right? And then the A has index position 3. The second T has index position 4. And the second O has index position 5. Okay, so hopefully you're able to see that. And you just start at 0, and then it will go all the way up to 1 less than the length. So if something has 6 characters in it, then the valid index positions are 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, there's no index position 6. So if you say something like system.out.println of apples.index of p, this returns 1. Okay, because you look at AP, so you go 0, 1. So it would be the first P is at index position 1. Okay, but if you say system.out.println of apples.lastIndexOf p, then you can guess what this does. So this would return 2, okay, because 0, 1, 2, APP. So now we're not looking at the first P, we're looking at the second P, and that second P has index position 2, so that should return the number 2. What if a substring is not included in a string? So what if you said system.out.println of apples, and let's find the last index of, doesn't even matter whether you're talking about the first or the last, but the last index of u, this would return -1. Okay, so if you find a substring is not found anywhere in a string, then it doesn't throw an error, it doesn't say, oh, you can't do that. It just returns -1. This is just the default output. It's okay, there's no error. It just throws -1. And clearly, an index position of -1 doesn't really make a lot of sense. So the interpretation of this is that u does not exist in the word apples, and certainly that is true. What about the replaceAll method? So then we can verify these things, right? So 1, 2, and -1, and then if we run the code, then those are the things that we get. So remember, to run a Java program, you come back in here, you have to compile it and close it, and then you're going to right-click it or control-click it and press void main string args, then press OK down here, and those are the 3 results that we were expecting. What about replaceAll? So if you call the replaceAll method, you call replaceAll on a string object, and then you feed it 2 arguments. The first argument is the old thing that you want to have replaced out of that string, and the second argument is whatever you want to replace it with. So let's do an example. String sentence is his pizza is delicious and pizza is served on Wednesday. Okay, something like that. And then you could say string revise sentence. So now we're going to create a new string object, but what we're going to do is we're going to call a string method on the original sentence. So you're going to say sentence.replaceAll, call the replaceAll function. You need to feed it with 2 arguments. So you put 2 strings in here. The first one is the old word that you want to replace, and the second one is the new word that's going to come into the string. So you can guess that with replaceAll, you make all the replacements, and then with replaceFirst, you would just do the first replacement. So this would replace all the pizzas with pasta. So pasta is delicious, and pasta is served on Wednesday. And now what you could do is you could just revise the sentence again, but instead of creating a new variable, let's just operate on revise sentence again. But now we're just going to replace the first instance of pasta. Okay, so the pizza and pizza becomes pasta and pasta. But now let's change the first pasta to seafood. Okay, so now at the end it should say seafood is delicious and pasta is served on Wednesday, right? And why would anyone say that? But what we're doing here is we're just trying to understand these Java commands. So now if you run the revised sentence, it says seafood is delicious and pasta is served on Wednesday. So hopefully you understand what it is that these 2 commands are doing. The next command to talk about And the last one that we'll talk about in this video, the one that you really should try to be familiar with, is the substring method. You can almost sort of think of it as the opposite of the indexOf method. Remember that the indexOf method takes a string and it looks for the index position of the first occurrence of a substring within that string. So you feed it a substring, gives you an index position. The substring method is the opposite. The substring method, you feed in the index position and it gives you a substring. So let me tell you about what I mean by that. So if you do something like string Q equals Boston, and then you say Q equals Q dot substring of 3. What it does is it reassigns Q to be all letters of Q starting at index position 3. So it would actually be, if you think about index position 3, well, capital B is at index position 0, lowercase o is at index position 1, lowercase s is at index position 2, capital T, or lowercase t is at index position 3. Okay, so basically this would reassign Q to just be ton. Okay, so it's not just the T, it's everything else. So starting at index position 3. So this would be Q equals ton. And then if you say system.out.println of Q dot toString, remember we said in the previous video that toString has no impact. So this is the same thing as just returning Q, which is ton. So now hopefully this prints ton. So now we go ahead and run the code and you get ton. And the last thing, there's two ways to use the substring method. If you just put in one argument, it will start at that index position and return all the remaining characters in the string. If you put in two arguments, it will return all characters in the string starting at the first index position and ending just before the second index position. So I'm going to write a little comment. a.substring of bc, okay, returns all letters in string A starting at index position B and ending just before index position C. So for example, potato.substring of 2 and 5 would be tat, okay, because the lowercase t is at position 2, so you start there, and then you get the lowercase a at position 3, the second lowercase t at position 4, but then you stop before index position 5, so it'll just be TAT. And it's kind of intuitive, right? Because 5 minus 2 is 3, so you're going to expect 3 letters here. Okay, so for example, you can think of another one. So if you do string u equals uppers, okay, and then you say system.out.println of u.substring of 0 and let's do int 2.2. Okay, so we're trying to weave in one or two concepts here. We talked about how you can convert a floating point number to an integer just by assigning it to int. So here the 2.2 is converted to a 2. u.substring of 0 and 2, that would just return all letters of string u starting at index position 0 and ending just before index position 2. So this would just be up. And so hopefully it would just print the word up here, and we can verify that. So you would just get up. So that kind of concludes our discussion of string methods. You need to be familiar with a bunch of those, and as you take AP Computer Science or you go into software engineering, it helps to know a little bit about how to work with character strings, okay? So you want to understand how to find the length of a string, how to see if two strings are equal, how to see if a string is empty, how to get the letters uppercase and lowercase, how to see if one string starts with or ends with another string, how to find the index position of one substring within a string, how to replace one substring with another substring within a string, and then finally, what does the substring method do? So how do you get a substring of a string by providing the index positions that you want to be as parameters that will help define where the substring begins and ends. So hopefully all those things are clear to you. In the next video, we're going to be talking a little bit more about parsing. We're going to talk a little bit more about converting between ints, doubles, and strings, just a little bit more on that topic. It should be a relatively short video, and then we will just proceed from there. So from UMills03, thanks for watching, and please subscribe.